Hi, and welcome back to the Taiwan Language Channel. It's been way too long since I made a video for the history of English, and I'd like to speed things up. So I'm going to start trying to make these videos without doing much editing at all, and just do them in one take and not worry about small mistakes and the perfecting of the subtitles and everything. I'll just run it through ChatGPT and we'll call it good. So let's jump right in. Today's topic is basically the disparity between English spelling and the pronunciation of English words in our modern day. I'm going to focus on word endings, which are called suffixes, and particularly I will focus on weak forms of verbs and silent letters. Let's jump right in. If you look at my previous videos, you'll notice that, of course, a lot of those Middle English words and especially Old English words are pronounced very differently. And a lot of the differences lie within the vowels, A, E, I, O, U letters, which can represent many different vowel sounds in English. Weak verbs in English are the verbs that end in ed. So, searched, spelled, those are forms called weak verbs, where the past tense version has an ed. And all of those change depending on the final consonant. Wheat, like weeded, like to pull out weeds in your garden. Or spelled, that one just ends in d instead of did, right? That's the bell from my school because I'm in my school filming. A side note, strong verbs are verbs in English that change drastically when they change to their past tense form. So, for example, eat. When it becomes past tense, it becomes ate. And write becomes wrote. Those are examples of strong verbs. They don't have an ed at the end. If you listen to any Middle English poetry, you will notice that these ed weak form verbs are always pronounced exactly the same, which is ed. So go back to my last video or search any Chaucer, Canterbury Tales reading that's in Middle English, and you'll notice all of those past tense ed verbs are pronounced exactly the same. There's no variation at all. And in fact, in Middle English, there were no silent letters at all. So the K at the beginning of the word night was pronounced knicht. And that word was pronounced knicht, and the K was pronounced. And same as in the word knife, it was knief instead of knife. This also includes the silent E at the end of many four-letter words. So, for example, the word tail and name, those used to be pronounced tala and nam. So the E was pronounced as a schwa in Middle English. No silent letters at all. Why did this change? Why did this go away? We can only speculate. There's no way to know with certainty why pronunciation changes. But there are a few possible answers to this mystery, which I will present now. The first is that English was introduced to people who were not native speakers of English. They grew up speaking other languages, and then they learned English later. And it may have been very difficult to blend certain consonant combinations like night, knight, knicht. That may have been difficult for them to say knicht. So you could see where the K might become more like a fricative, and then another generation just disappear completely. And then something called linguistic regularization may have also taken place, where they changed that instance of knief and knicht and applied it across the board to all instances of a silent K, like in kno or in knife. So it became night and knife and no. All the K's went away. That's an example of regularization. Another possible answer is that different groups of Middle English speakers, since they had their own little dialects of English, own little varieties, and spellings and pronunciation characteristics, one group's pronunciation may have won out over the other group. And then everybody adopted that standard form that was the majority, let's say, or the more powerful, let's say. So an example of this happened with the weak verb form past tense ed and the letter T. If you go and dive into some research about Middle English spelling, you will find that many instances people did also use T for most past tense weak form verbs. A good example of one word that is a good example of this is dreamt and dreamed. So this difference remains today, and even sometimes is a marker of the difference between English of the UK and English of the USA. But yes, a standardization did occur, and one group may have won out over the other group. Sometimes, here's the third, sometimes even a new generation of native speakers of a language will gradually start shifting pronunciation of consonants without, any other influence. It might just be a path of least resistance, or it might just become trendy to make certain letters fricative or blur certain vowels until they get obfuscated in such a way that they just change dramatically or disappear completely. This is true of many different languages. You can go take a look at the history of Spanish and Spanish pronunciation and the history of Italian. Many letters change. It just happens throughout history. Language is constantly evolving. It's evolving now. We can plainly see it as evidenced, from my previous videos of Old English to modern English. There's drastic changes occurring. And obviously, alphabets and orthography usually trail far behind pronunciation changes. This makes sense because people write dictionaries before these changes occur, and they want to keep things standardized. They cannot reinvent the whole writing system and spelling system to reflect constant changes in pronunciation. You'll see on the internet people spell things funny to represent the modern colloquial way that we say words. But these dictionaries are standard and set in stone, so to speak, so they're hard to change. Oxford Dictionary and Merriam-Webster are two good examples of linguistic standardization in the UK and America, respectively. I hope this video clears up some questions you may have had about the silent letters and past tense EDs in English and why there's so much difference in pronunciation with all of this. And I'm sure that we'll touch on it again in future videos, meaning me. Until next time, I hope you have a great time and fare thee well.